podcast, an inside look at California politics and the state legislature. I'm your host, Assemblyman Josh Hoover, and very excited to be joined today by my guest, Vince Sugrue, Legislative Director for Sheet Metal Workers Local Union 104. How's it going, Vince? Thanks for joining.
It's going great. I'm excited to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Awesome, man. Yeah, no, we're excited to have you. And I put it up here at the top of the show notes, but this is actually the 50th episode. So
congratulations.
it's pretty
50.
crazy,
right
man,
on,
right? Like, so exciting to hit that 50 mark. And yeah, really excited to have you on the show. So just to up front to say a little bit about Sheet Metal Workers Local 104, you guys span 49 California counties from the Oregon border to Ventura County, huge territory. Your membership's made up of over 9,000 highly skilled craftspeople that are trained to perform a wide selection of skills such as production, fabrication, installation, detailing, and testing and balancing of sheet metal products and HVAC. I know that's a big mouthful there, and I'm going to let you dive into that a little bit. But first, I was just wanted to talk to you a little bit about some fun stuff. So I hear you're from Oakland, first of all.
You grew up in the East Bay, born and raised in Concord, and I've been living in Oakland with my wife. Her and I have been living there for the last several years, but I've been there for about 12 years now.
Oh, that's awesome, man.
Yeah.
So how are your thoughts on all the Oakland sports drama? Because that's always the big controversy right now. Because they lost the A's and the Raiders and all that stuff. And I've got a bunch of A's friends that, are all pissed off. So
yeah,
and Sacramento apparently is stealing them. So
no, it's a great question. I mean, it is a heartbreaker that we're losing the A's. And, we were excited the Warriors moved to San Francisco. Have you had a chance to go to the Chase Arena?
I've been to Chase once. Yeah.
Okay.
I went there once. Yeah.
Yeah. Phenomenal. So, I mean, that stadium put a ton of our members to work for several years. Yeah. It was great. I think, and the Warriors' legacy is phenomenal.
Yeah.
But man, what a disappointment with the A's. And
I know.
I'm excited that they're in Sacramento at least for a few years. I mean, I'm hoping we can do something to keep them long term.
That'd be awesome.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm a Giants fan, so I can't be too excited about it. But honestly, for Sacramento, this is a city that supports its teams, And
oh, for sure.
I mean, we've just always supported the Kings and always supported, I don't know, just I think we would really support a team here. So that would be really exciting if we could keep them.
I think it's doable. And given that Local 104, we cover Sacramento as well, we'd be excited to build the stadium.
Dude, let's do it. Yeah, let's build a stadium. That'd
be excited about that.
The Kings Arena, did you have guys that worked on the new, Golden One Center?
We did. And actually, that project, that broke ground at the perfect time. As you remember, the economy was very turbulent.
Oh, yeah.
And that project, to me, has really totally been a beacon of growth around Sacramento, and there's just been so much focus, and that put a ton of our members to work for several years. Yeah, it was a great project.
Yeah, no, it really has revitalized that part of downtown in a huge way, and it's kind of continued to grow out slowly, from the arena. I think there's still work to be done there, but it's really been a great revitalization effort. Now we're starting to talk about revitalizing old Sacramento, which is going to be a huge, I think boon for that area as well. And just I don't know, I just love it. I love to see it. So
yeah, I wish, to be honest, we had as much that's going on in Sacramento that we do in the Bay Area. Right. I think Sacramento is booming right now.
It really does feel that way, right? Well, not just obviously the city has a lot of stuff going on, but then out in my district, because I don't have the city of Sac, but out in my district in Northeast Sac County, we're just building crazy houses and just expanding very rapidly. A lot of new housing projects, a lot of new businesses. So yeah, it's pretty exciting.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah. I also hear you're a big rock climber. Okay, so you got to tell me about this. That I don't climb. My buddy was a big into bouldering, which is 10-foot whatever walls or so he got me out and do that a few times. I wouldn't say I was particularly good at it, but you do actually the roped climbs and stuff, or what do you like to do?
I love rock climbing. If that's bouldering, the short, very difficult movement, 10 to 15 feet, and also sport climbing where you climb with a rope. The Sierras have some of the best climbing in the world.
That's
People
awesome.
travel from all over the world to climb in California, and we're really lucky to have what we have. We have Yosemite in our backyard.
Oh, yeah.
We have Lake Tahoe, and that oftentimes, I'm my wife and I drive right through your district very often to
Yeah.
go to Tahoe, and the season's just starting because we like to rock climb when it's colder, so
Oh, really?
the rock
Okay.
is stickier, yeah,
Nice. I
so
didn't That's cool. That's
yeah.
interesting. It's so funny, like, I it's really not cooling down that fast this year, and
No.
it's been, like I feel like it's been super hot even in October, so that's been kind of frustrating
I know,
because 'cause I'm
well,
waiting for it to cool down.
for sure, and then it's tough because then at a certain point, the snow falls, so I feel
Oh,
like
that's true,
the
so you only
season's
have
getting
a
a little
small
shorter,
window.
yeah, yeah.
Interesting, interesting.
Yeah, but we love it.
That's awesome, man. So you and your wife both like to climb.
Yeah,
Oh, that's
yeah.
awesome. That's cool. Have you ever done the like Yosemite thing, the half dome like walk that everyone falls on, that they always talk about? Like, you know what I'm talking
I know
about?
exactly
Like,
what you're talking about. I have not done the half dome
okay,
cables,
yeah,
and quite honestly, I mean, I'd feel pretty terrified. You know, a lot
it
of
seems
friends,
scary.
yeah, a lot of my friends who have done it, they'll wear their climbing harness and they'll clip in
Oh, that
to
makes
the
sense.
actual
Yeah,
cables
yeah,
just
no,
for
that makes way
safety.
more sense.
Yeah, because I've heard it's really slick.
That's what I've read. I mean, I've never done it, but it just like yeah, it seems really scary.
Yeah.
So
No, it's a
that's
trip.
cool, man. Well, I don't know if I'll be joining you on the rock climbing. I don't know if I have the upper body strength
You're
for it,
always
but
welcome, though. I want you to know that.
that would be cool.
Yeah.
I might, yeah. If you have a super easy climb, I might come out for that. But we also talked about some of the restaurants you like in my district. So I wanted to hear your take on this because I hear it's unique.
Here's the thing. So my wife and I both love eating plant-based,
Yeah,
and your district has an immense amount of good food.
good to know.
I'm also kind of picky.
Yeah,
So
okay.
if I were to give you a top three, I think I also appreciate that your show likes to list things as well
Yes,
because
we do. Yeah,
yeah.
exactly.
Um, so I came ready. So to me, number three is the Folsom Curry Pizza House.
Oh, Curry Pizza House. Yes,
Uh,
that's pretty new.
It and it
Okay,
is delicious. I
it
mean,
is.
the
Okay,
fusion is great,
good.
and we're big Indian food folks, so
Nice.
that works well. My number two, don't judge me,
No, no, no judgment.
the Folsom Whole Foods Hot Bar.
What is this?
No, like the Whole Foods, the
Oh, the
store,
Whole
the
Foods.
hot
Like
bar.
I get what you're saying. Yes. Oh, that's an excellent
Yeah,
choice.
I
Yeah,
mean,
absolutely.
it's
And
right
they
off
have
the
the beer garden
freeway.
there and everything.
It,
Like,
it, it
yeah,
is so. It is just like caters to everything.
yeah,
When
yeah.
we're super hungry at the end of the day, it is
Dude,
guaranteed to
no
be
judgment
open.
on that
I
one. Yeah.
appreciate that. And then number one, which to me is quite honestly
Yeah.
a gift in terms of a restaurant, is Petra.
Oh, love Petra.
Okay, great.
Okay, we agree on that one.
Right.
That is a great
Yeah,
restaurant.
Petra holds. I think Petra is some of the best Greek food in California. Quite
It's
honestly.
really, really good stuff. Like when we actually, I used to go to the one here downtown for many years. It's still there, and then they opened one in Folsom, and I was super excited about it.
Okay.
My wife and I like love going there
Yeah,
because it's just yeah, it's awesome.
it's so good. Yeah, and the
Yeah,
price point's really good. I feel like you
yeah,
get a ton of food. Yeah, it's
yeah.
incredible.
So it's funny you say Curry Pizza House because that's literally so we used to go to the restaurant that was there before that, which was Rock and Fire, and they closed down. The owner actually has a place in historic Folsom still called Riley's on Sutter Street. But I live down the street from that place, and I've never been in there. And we keep talking about going, and we just have never gone.
It's worth it.
So
Definitely
I'm
go.
just like now I'm like really regretting
Yeah.
not going. Have you tried? You like Indian food? Have you tried? I think it's like Ricci in
Yeah, that's
Folsom,
really close
which is
to.
it's close to Curry Pizza House
Yes,
as
love
well.
that as well. That'd
So I
probably
was
be a
just
number
there
four
the
or
other
five.
day. Yeah. So they have really cool owners and they're very popular as well. So
Oh, nice. Shout
yeah, well
out.
that's good to know, man. I mean, I can't say any. Well, Petra might be in the top for me, but I can't see any of those are on my list.
Do you have like a good go to that you'd recommend?
Um, like that's a good question. I mean, I don't know because I feel like the only time I ever like eat now is like when I can go to dinner with my wife somewhere, and it's usually higher end. I guess it's not like as casual, right?
Yeah,
So
that's
like
fair.
Land Ocean is really awesome.
Okay.
It's right off the freeway as well. There off of East Bidwell. So and they have actually a bunch of restaurants. They've got one in Town Center. They have Sienna up in El Dorado Hills, and they own all of them. So like we always love going to Land Ocean. And then there's this little place. Let's see. What yeah, I'm trying to remember like some of our other places that we usually go. Scott's Seafood is always solid in historic Folsom. There's
Okay,
actually a
yeah.
lot of good stuff in historic Folsom, or a handful of good things there. But yeah, it's I don't know. So I would say like it's it's tough, right? Because we try to find like spots that we really like,
Hmm.
and yeah, it's we just don't get to go out a lot. So
Totally fair.
yeah,
Totally
so
fair.
but
You've got a really good community.
we do
We
for sure.
always try and stop on the way back. So
Oh, that's
yeah,
awesome,
I think
man.
it's
Love it.
great
Love that you're swinging by, you know.
for
Maybe one of
sure.
these times we'll connect with each other when you're
Definitely.
swinging by. So let's dive in, man. Let's talk about, you know, I guess let's just start by tell us a little bit about like yourself, your professional background, and then we can get into, you know, local 104 too. But what's yeah, tell us about yourself.
That sounds great. So, I'm a state legislative director with the Sheet Metal Workers Local Union 104, as you mentioned. And my story, I think, really begins back to when I was young. So, grew up in Concord, as I said, East Bay, and my father was a police officer in the Tenderloin in San
Oh, wow.
Francisco. And he unfortunately passed away from a massive heart attack when I was 8 years old. He
Hmm.
was 39, black belt in karate.
Wow.
Um, and it was a really difficult time in my life. And my mom had to find full time employment. But the reason we were able to stay in our house in Concord was because of his death benefit and the modest pension. And to me, at a young age, I really realized how much I valued, at that time, the POA, but really just unions as a whole in creating stability in my life. And then from there, in my teens, I got into music subgenre called hardcore music. That is
Yeah.
like it's like a punk subculture, but it's really, the music was really about resistance and talking about really important issues. From
Were you a musician yourself, or was it just
I play
like
guitar and I did some
nice?
vocals.
All
Yeah,
right, cool. I love
yeah,
it. I
yeah.
love it.
If I'm playing now, I'm just doing like Blink 182
Yeah,
pop punk
yeah, keep
covers
it. Yeah,
to
yeah,
my
for
wife
sure.
and my
I love it.
dog.
I love
So
it. That's
yeah,
great.
but I was in a band, and
Nice.
it was cool because the music was focused on workers' rights, different sort of
Yeah.
activism, and from there I knew I really wanted to work for a labor union. And at 18, I found an internship with sheet metal,
Nice.
and I worked on. At the time, Governor Schwarzenegger had passed Assembly Bill 32, the Global Warming Solutions Act,
Yeah.
and the union was really interested in how do we play a part in broader energy efficiency, Title
Yeah.
24, and create work opportunities for members. So I went to Sonoma State. I studied political science and geography, and it was cool because I worked for Local 104 summers and winters. And then the business manager at the time came to me after I graduated, and he said, "Vince, we want to bring you on full time, and we want to pay you. Um, we want to go through the essentially an organizing apprenticeship with you. We want to pay you apprentice wages for 5 years, and then you'll turn out just like our journey persons do, which is not necessarily traditional in the building trades. A lot of
Yeah.
folks come from rank and file and then work for the union. So I felt really lucky for the opportunity, and started full time employment at 22 with Local 104, and now I'm 35, and
Awesome.
it's just been such an incredible experience, and I'm so grateful for it.
That's awesome, man.
Yeah.
So what brought you? So you obviously got the internship. You went to Sonoma, and then what brought you to your current role?
Yeah, so much of the work I was doing initially was Bay Area focused, and at the time, thinking back to 2012 through 2014, the housing market was starting to come back,
Yeah.
and a lot of multifamily housing, but there was a lot of worker exploitation within the multifamily housing space. We were seeing contractors pay undocumented folks $15 an hour, and
Yeah.
listening to their stories, trying to work with developers to create good opportunities for local residents. And that really turned into a political role because so much of the work we were doing was community oriented,
Mm.
and trying to look at public works project labor agreements, look at securing project labor agreements with local developers, and then also trying to help spur development, because as you can imagine, and as we still see on the peninsula, there is a lot of pushback towards general development.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of just navigating
For
that
sure.
space and finding that balance. And
Yeah.
so I did a lot of work politically with that. And then also simultaneously worked with a lot of our pre apprenticeship programs.
That's
So
cool.
in Northern California in particular, we have so many different what we call multi-core craft curriculums. So that's MC3. It's building trades sponsored programs, and it's for veterans, it's for disadvantaged folks. And our union in particular, 1 out of every 10 folks comes from a
Wow.
pre-apprenticeship program into our union. And so being able to uplift those folks and be equity focused and say, hey, listen, we want to give these opportunities, and we can make as many opportunities as possible, but we need the work to go along with that
For
to
sure.
bring
Yeah.
folks to give them a 5-year apprenticeship. So that's really the work that I've done, and that led to a state legislative role where I work on policy initiatives both locally and statewide.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's really cool. So tell us a little bit about Local 104 and maybe even more specifically, like the work that you guys do, because I know when I started learning about you guys and getting into the policy sphere, right? Like it was, I mean, there's so many different trades and different jobs, right? So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, thank you. So we're incredibly multifaceted, and our membership it spans the gamut. We do heating and air conditioning systems. We total system envelope when it comes to heating and air conditioning systems. But in addition, we do architectural sheet metals and we test and balance systems. We also do residential changeouts. So
Oh wow,
you may find a local 104 member in a single family home installing a
interesting.
heat pump, all the way to doing architectural sheet metal on a high rise building.
Wow.
I mean, it is spans the gamut. And so primarily what we do and where the sheet metal worker identity comes from is, we take a flat piece of sheet metal and we fabricate it oftentimes into duct, which moves air, and we install HVAC systems, and then we service those HVAC systems. So
Okay.
it's everything from initial fabrication to the install of a system to testing and balancing the system, so that systems are energy efficient. Because
Mm,
ultimately, these systems are supposed to perform at a certain usage,
right.
and if they're improperly installed, then they have to use more energy. Oftentimes
Yeah.
buildings use over 40% of energy just on a heating and air conditioning
Wow.
system. So if they're properly installed and maintained, that number goes down, and yeah, it saves the building owners or
That's awesome.
homeowners money. Yeah, so
That's really
that's where
cool.
we come in.
I love it, man. So what would you say is your organization's philosophy on, wages, hiring? You've already kind of touched on apprenticeships, but I know like we've had some different conversations on this podcast, so just love to hear your kind of where you're coming from.
Totally, I appreciate that. Can I ask, are you familiar with the history of prevailing wage?
I would say somewhat, but please educate us for the listeners if you would like. Yeah.
So I actually have just been doing recent research on this as well to see really, where it comes at, because we talk a lot about prevailing
Sure.
wages
Yeah.
within the state and the legislature. So prevailing wage actually was implemented in 1931. It was signed by President Hoover.
Yeah.
Shout
Oh
out to the
wow.
name.
That I actually did not know.
Yeah,
So thank you for
yeah,
the
yeah,
knowledge.
yeah, yeah, yeah. No, it's worth owning. But it was brought to Congress by the legislatures Davis and Bacon. So you may have heard of the Davis-Bacon Act. That is the Prevailing Wage Act. And these were two Republicans. It was actually Republican-led, and Hoover was a Republican who signed it. They lived in Pennsylvania and New York, respectively, and they brought these big infrastructure projects back to their
Yeah.
communities. The challenge they had is a lot of folks were coming in from out of town to build those projects and bidding on those projects at much less, significantly lower rates than the local standard rate.
Hmm.
So they wanted to create an area standard wage that said, hey, listen, there's obviously different area standard wages in different locations. And so let's put a baseline prevailing wage, and that will allow us to make sure that local workers in the construction industry are the ones that are building these projects,
Hmm.
because they'll be able to bid it competitively and not be underbid by folks coming in from, oftentimes in this case, out of state. And since the 1930s, there have been a ton of projects that have been under prevailing wage, and it's really created a lot of stability and all. I
Hmm.
really emphasize the point of stability because there's two paths in construction. Really, there's the high road model and a low road model. And what our union emphasizes is the high road model, which includes prevailing wage, local hire,
Hmm.
apprenticeship. I mean, that's
Yeah.
really the fundamental core, and that really is what we see as our values.
Oh, that's really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's actually really good to know, too, about the history. It's very interesting.
Hmm.
So appreciate you sharing that. It's funny, actually, a friend of mine recently, because it's election season right now, sent me like an old Hoover campaign button
Oh, that's what's
from
up.
President Hoover, right?
Oh, yeah.
And he's like, "Hey, you should think about bringing these back." And it was just It just said "a chicken in every pot" was the slogan on the button, which I was like, honestly, back then apparently chicken was a lot more expensive,
Mhm.
like than even than other meats, right? And so saying like a chicken in every pot was actually like a big deal. Like, wow, a chicken, whereas now chicken's actually one of the more affordable,
Yeah, 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 yeah.
things to eat compared to like beef prices and some of the other things as well right now. So it's just really funny. So I'm like, hey, maybe we'll try it out. We'll workshop it.
Yeah, 2026. I think just at least test it. So
2026. Yeah, exactly. Um, so let's talk a little bit more about like the concept of apprenticeships because I also and also just too for people that might be even interested that are listening, like what does it take to get involved in an apprenticeship? What does it take to kind of apply and what are the opportunities that are available for people that are looking to go into this line of work?
I appreciate the question. Our apprentices are so uniquely diverse. It's incredible. I mean, it's unlike any industry that I can look at. So, as I mentioned, we have veterans, we have folks from disadvantaged communities, we have folks who went to UC Berkeley, right? We
Mm,
have folks who see the apprenticeship program and what we have to offer as a good opportunity. Our apprenticeship program is 5 years and it's earning while you learn. So you go to classes for 6 weeks and then you're out in the field learning
yeah.
and you're earning while you learn and upskilling to turn out as a journey person. Just in our apprenticeship alone, we have nearly 2,000 applicants just in the Bay Area, probably 3,000 in Northern California. Folks desperately want to be an apprentice in Local
Yeah.
104.
Yeah.
The challenge we have is we need the work.
Yeah.
And as you know, I mean, work has changed significantly post COVID. I mean,
Sure.
the metric I use, which I don't know if this is an effective metric, but when I say it, folks are like, oh, yeah, I could see that. So we had over 30 tower cranes in downtown San Francisco in
Okay.
2019.
Wow. Okay.
We do not have a tower crane downtown right now in San
That's
Francisco.
incredible.
We have a few on the outskirts and in Mission
Yeah.
Bay. Um, but really, I mean, the bread and butter high rise work that has fueled so many of the building trades has really,
Hmm.
you know, the tech industry has changed in California.
Yep.
And Apple Campus 2, for example, which
Right.
was our largest project in Cupertino that we've ever seen in 104.
Yeah. Was that the spaceship?
That was the
Yeah,
spaceship.
yeah, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, very
Yeah.
cool project.
Yeah. My dad worked there for a minute.
Oh, no way.
I mean, near the end of his career, was with Apple for 22 years, but
Oh,
I
cool.
think they built the spaceship at the end of his time there, and he was there for a little bit. So
Oh, that's great.
pretty neat. I've never actually been over there, so I
Did he
need
so
to.
he got to actually be
He was
inside?
in there for a minute, yeah,
Oh, that's
yeah,
cool.
before he retired.
Oh,
So
that's
it's pretty
amazing.
cool. So that's cool. You guys worked on that though. That's
We
exciting.
did, and it had over 300 sheet metal workers for
That's
3
amazing.
years. I mean,
Wow.
for us, that's a lot,
Yeah.
right? So, I mentioned we have all these applicants, and for us, I mean, it's you know, you do have to come in
Right.
with a base of math,
Right.
but all it takes is a high school or GED,
Okay.
and that's a variety of the construction unions. I mean,
Sure.
it's
Yeah.
the entry level is very fair, right?
Yeah.
But you are going to use math in so many of the different construction
Sure.
unions. It's just inevitable. Um, but and that's where we really promote the pre-apprenticeship to upskill folks who want to take the test and get in. But for us right now, we just need more construction
Yeah.
work in order to
Need
bring
jobs.
folks
Yeah.
in. Yeah, and
Yeah.
so it's
So you're just
accessible to all.
limited by obviously the projects that are available, right?
Yes,
So you can't bring obviously someone in if you don't have somewhere to send them.
that's
Right?
exactly
Yeah.
it. And
Yeah.
and the cool thing about Local 104 is, we do our best to guarantee folks 5 years of their apprenticeship where they're working the whole time. So we're very strategic about the number of folks. We don't just want to let them.
Sure.
We want folks to graduate, work a solid 5 years, journey out, and work their career so
Got
that
it.
they can
Yeah.
retire with dignity.
Yeah.
So
No, that's awesome.
yeah.
So what do you think we need to do in California to fix this, right? Because I think, you know, when we talk, like I talk a lot in the legislature about on the housing side, for example, and I know you guys work on a lot of commercial as well,
Hmm.
but on the housing side, it's like the demand is definitely there, right, for houses,
Hmm.
right, and for building more homes. But the kind of cost effectiveness and like the ability, the red tape, maybe the bureaucratic, kind of slog of doing that is sometimes a barrier But what do you think? What do you see needing to change in California to really kind of build more stuff and build in a, really kind of spark this new building?
Yeah, and given I'm also on the Oakland Planning Commission.
That's super interesting.
Yeah, so
So you've seen stuff from the local level too. So
I have
yeah,
everything from the state level down to,
yeah,
how things are working on a local level. Um, you know, I I I think it's multifaceted, as we all can agree. So I think there's the commercial and how we bring the commercial back, and how do we deal with the housing. And so
yeah.
I'll start with the housing. So I actually feel like the state legislature has gone above and beyond to make streamlining very realistic.
Okay,
Um, I When we talk about red tape, I am not seeing that, especially in our metropolitan areas
okay,
where folks are utilizing a lot of bills
yeah,
to be able to make projects at least go through the entitlement process.
for sure.
Now the question is once they're through the entitlement process, are they building?
Right.
Um, and I think that's, you know, some areas rents are going up, other areas that they're not. And
Yeah.
so I question myself too of, how much is the broader, interest rate playing a role in
Sure.
things?
Yeah.
Because so many projects are entitled,
Mm,
particularly in metropolitan areas in
interesting.
California. But that said, I mean, you have communities like we talked about Cupertino that built
Oh yeah.
Apple Campus 2 and then 26 housing units
Yep.
the same year, 14,000 jobs.
No
And
houses.
yeah,
Yeah.
and so it's like this is a really challenging balance, and I think we only make it more complex because we look at the ability of a construction project to have very positive impacts on the community and
Yeah.
wanting that to be built with a local union workforce.
Yeah.
And so it's interesting. We did something recently. The local building trades, Alameda County Building Trades. We worked on it for several years in the city of Berkeley. Berkeley is the perfect example of where, I think rents just continue to go up. It's a very lucrative city. They are very pro housing, but they also have the workers in mind. And I worked on this in coordination with the carpenters as well. They
Mm,
were integral to the process, and we created an ordinance because we have this problem, as I mentioned, of the high road versus the low road
sure.
contractor. Um, and I don't frame it in terms of union, non-union. Truly, I mean, I think that there are great contractors that span every walk of life in California. The challenge we have is that the low road model is not the union model. It's not the
Right.
model
Right.
using apprenticeship. Oftentimes, it is exploitative with undocumented folks, and we're trying to figure out ways of solving for that. So in Berkeley, pro housing city, we come up with a kind of first in the nation policy, which Berkeley likes to own, which is great. We called it the Hard Hats Ordinance. It's an acronym for Helping Achieve Responsible Development with Healthcare and Training Standards.
Wow.
You
Yeah.
know, Oftentimes in the housing market, we talk to workers who don't have healthcare,
Yeah.
who utilize the county system for healthcare. And quite honestly, I mean that it really frustrates me when I continue to hear that time and time again. Um, it's a model where folks don't want to go there because they don't see a career path. Oftentimes, these construction workers will stay in construction for a few years and then they'll find another profession.
Mm.
So for us, we got the hard hats ordinance passed. We had a ton of support, and just before it was enacted, this January 1st, 2024, in December 2023, the city of Berkeley had 5,000 units for applications from different developers
Wow.
who used Senate Bill 330, which helped
Yeah.
streamline a lot of
Right.
housing projects, to basically lock themselves in that particular entitlement timeframe. And so we like to say that hard hats, spurred housing more than anything else that ever has.
That's interesting.
But it is a frustration on our end from the workers' perspective of, we want to be able. There are plenty of people who want to do construction,
Yeah.
but the question is, how do we bring in folks and how do we emphasize, our values when it comes to a construction project and the impact it can have? And I tell you all this to say I was recently walking a picket line in Berkeley where there was an SB 330 project,
Mm.
and there were workers from Washington. They were undocumented folks building They were doing the shoring of the project, and outside of the gate, they were asking our folks, "How do I get into the union in Washington? What is it going to take to get into the
Hmm.
union?" Folks want to be in the union. They
Yeah.
want,
Interesting.
the ability. Um, and they were making $25 an hour on this project. I mean, construction is incredibly difficult work,
Yeah.
and you can make basically that at In and Out. Let's face it,
Yeah.
right?
Especially now in California,
Yeah,
right? Yeah.
with healthcare. And so to me, it's, and obviously getting back to your original question of like, how do we fix this? I think we're looking at this holistically because I also see this as a worker issue. And, how do we bring back the middle class into the housing sector? Um, because I think there can be more of it. And I think
Mm.
there's a desire to be. There's a really cool piece of legislation that just passed in San Francisco, and I'm curious to see it enacted. Is there's if a project is utilizing union pension funds to fund a housing development, then that developer will get a series of tax credits
Mm.
as a result. And that work obviously would be built with local union labor, which to me I think is just so cool, and I think it's a way of looking at, and that's the thing, is like looking at different ways that we can encourage a local union workforce. I think different ways that we can encourage apprenticeship. I know you've had the chance to come down to our apprenticeship
Yeah.
program.
Yeah.
We had a
It's amazing.
great tour there. I hate to say this. Is it Mather or Mather? How do you say
Uh,
it?
Mather. Yeah.
It's Mather. Okay,
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
saying Mather
Yeah.
too.
Yeah. Yeah.
I've heard people I respect say Mather though.
Really?
Oh yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Well, that would be news to me. So that's not how I. But
Okay,
yeah.
no, I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so one of our training facilities is in Mather, and I'm grateful you were able to
Yeah. No, that was awesome,
attend.
and that was a really great experience, and just seeing it up close, and all the work that you guys are doing there is really awesome. So
Thank you. And I think that for us, we're looking at things in framing of housing of like how do we bring more of that? How do we bring
yeah.
more apprentices into California?
Well, and I hate to say it because, like, obviously, we always want to support our Sacramento projects and our Sacramento workers. But, in a lot of ways, I've also been talking about how on the housing side, like, the Bay Area really needs to step up too, right?
Mhm.
Because, we have so many people from the Bay Area that are now moving to my district and to Sacramento County. Again, everyone welcome right here. But at the end of the day, a lot of the reason for that is because it's either, there's no housing in the Bay Area. You were talking about Cupertino. I mean, you have all these jobs and you don't really have a lot of options for housing, much less affordable housing, like housing that, is, I think, priced at a decent rate. And so, I think some of these bills that have been flying through the legislature, or not flying through, but, like introduced in the legislature by some of my colleagues, I mean, some of it is just about kind of like trying to push the Bay Area to build more because I don't, I think my district honestly is doing its job when it comes to housing production. I mean, we are building tons of single family, tons of multifamily, and we're just not seeing that in a lot of other places. And so I think it's really interesting. And I would love to see that kind of improve in the Bay Area. So
For
it'd be,
sure.
yeah.
And I think that, one of the interesting things about Oakland is I feel like Oakland has had to take a lot of the brunt of
Yeah.
housing for the peninsula.
Interesting.
There's been a ton of construction, particularly on housing, and I think the city's taken its housing element very
Yeah.
seriously. They've framed it around actually wanting to build more housing, wanting to build more affordable
Right. Right.
housing. I have a project right down the street from where I live, which has just been, I, I mean, a nightmare would be an understatement, and I really feel, I really do feel for the developer because it's the old CCA site. So it's California College of the Arts. They abandon it. It's in an area of historic importance. It's transit-oriented development in the most
Yeah.
affluent area in Oakland.
Hmm.
And initially, they had proposed a 19-story tower, and I'm sure you can imagine that went over terribly.
Yeah.
But to me, I also think, and one of the things too is communities finding the win-win. That's
Yeah.
one of the things that working in Sacramento has taught me this year is like you have to figure out where your middle is.
Yeah.
As much as obviously, and there are some things where I think you need to plant the flag, absolutely. But they knocked this project down 19 stories to 8 stories, and the community pushes even harder
Yeah.
against it. And the project is still, working its way through various
Interesting.
committees. And so I think of there's the streamline elements, and then there's the
Yeah.
local community opposition
Yeah.
to different
Yeah.
projects. And I
Sure.
I feel like you can only legislate so much.
Sure. Oh,
Bef-
totally.
when the community stands up against a project for
Yeah.
whatever reason, obviously folks are going to feel a
Yeah.
particular way, but most projects aren't even getting to city councils and board of supervisors these
Interesting.
days, which is why I'm saying, like, I feel like the streamlining exists.
Right. Right. You got to kind of overcome the second part.
Yeah.
Interesting. So on the commercial side, though, would you say that the pandemic has really you mentioned how tech has changed, right? And so I'm interested to see what you mean by that. But also, like, has the pandemic really impacted, the commercial building space just from a standpoint of more and more people are working remotely, and we're not really have a need for as many buildings and things like that. Do you see that happening?
Yeah, unfortunately I do, and obviously I've, longtime listener, big time fan
Yeah,
of
yeah.
Point of Order. And I know that you've had some good conversations about the work from home, the what do we do with, the all
Different perspectives,
yeah, yeah.
different
I
perspectives. Yeah.
respect it. Yeah, we certainly have a perspective that we desperately want to see people back in
Of
offices,
course, of
right?
course. No,
Um,
understandably.
because and that's the incredible thing. Like, I'm a big fan of San Francisco,
Yeah.
and I I have been blown away by how spectacular we've been able to make downtown San Francisco,
Yeah.
and then obviously to see folks not back there working. Have you been to the Salesforce Park right there?
Oh, that's a good I don't
It's
know,
like it's
actually.
on the 4th story. It's
I might not have been there,
Yeah.
actually, yeah.
So the vision is to have all of the train activity come to the
Okay.
downtown corridor. I mean,
Oh,
it's a
interesting.
brilliant vision. The challenge we have is obviously, yeah, in the commercial market, folks,
Right.
they work from home. And I obviously I respect it, right?
Sure,
It's the
yeah.
way that things have adapted.
I mean, I think too, there's a lot of jobs where that's not really workable, right?
For
So, like,
sure.
I mean, I think to the extent that companies are taking advantage of it where it makes sense, I get.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, I mean, I think there still should be, or at least will be, you know, um, jobs that are best done in an office setting, right? Or in a team setting, I guess would be a better way to put it.
Totally. And I think it goes back to, what do we want our communities to look like, and how do we want to value them? And I
Yeah.
think that in-person interaction is just, you can't beat it.
Yeah, I hear you there. Yeah.
And so I think, and we will see what happens in the Bay Area. I'm optimistic
Hmm.
seeing that interest rates are coming down, and
Yeah.
um, you know, to be honest, I think the saving grace, particularly in California as a whole, I'm really curious about how the biotech industry is going to expand here, because biotech is an in-person industry.
Yeah.
We're seeing a lot of cool biotech corridors open up.
Yeah.
I mean, the peninsula is famous for biotech, but we're starting to see it expand along the 80 corridor.
Yeah.
And I think that there's a great opportunity in the next 10 years, especially with the mass investment in the state
Yeah.
from medicine, and folks want the talent that
Yeah.
lives in California. We hear this constantly. And so we have great educational hubs. So
Yeah.
I'm optimistic that biotech could save us.
I think biotech's a great opportunity for California. I know we actually have a couple new companies even in my district in the biotech space that I'm really excited about. And yeah, I think all of these types of innovations, right? These new companies are really gonna, I think, help drive our economy and hopefully present new opportunities to build and things like that. So yeah, that's really exciting. That's really exciting. And honestly, I do think too there is kind of a push to send people back to the office right now,
Yeah.
which has been kind of interesting. And I'm not just talking about the governor, right?
Yeah.
This isn't about even state employees, just in general. I do think that private companies, some in my district, have really embraced remote work. Have done so pretty successfully. But then you've had, some companies that have decided that, that's not what they want to do long term, and they've started to move back. I think either way though, you know, once we, I think, settle on a balance there, because I do
Mhm.
think at some point we're going to settle on a balance where there's going to be some careers that are remote, some that aren't. Um, I think we have to, from that, like, find a way to reimagine these downtowns where it's a bigger mix of housing and, like, work and play and all these things, right? Like
Mhm.
just as we continue to reimagine, you know, urban cores, right? So I think that'll be fun. I think that'll be important for you guys too, right? Because it'll truly be, I think, opportunities to change kind of the dynamic of some things downtown. So
Can I ask, how
yeah,
do you feel like the legislature could make an impact, or
yeah.
what conversations are taking place to spur commercial development in California?
I think that's a great question. I think people are still trying to figure that out.
Mhm.
You know, I'll be honest with you. I'll go on my little tirade very briefly, but I think the legislature is trapped in a bit of a kind of a different mindset, kind of maybe a mindset that's no longer exactly valid. Like I think we need to reframe a little bit what our community spaces are going to look like, what our cities are going to look like. Particularly as we talk about remote work kind of growing in popularity and things like that. But like the certain I won't name names, but there's just certain people that like really, for example, want to get cars off the roads, right? They want to shrink down or at least prohibit the expansion of roadways, things like that. I think that's a mistake. I think public transit absolutely needs to be a part of the solution and we need to fund those projects. But at the end of the day, we're not getting rid of cars. If anything, our cars are just going to become green and they're going to become clean,
Mhm.
which ultimately is going to solve the problem that, a lot of these individuals want to solve, which is the environment, right? And I think technology, a lot of times we're just downplaying the role that technology is going to have on cleaning up our environment and actually making the products that we use today that maybe aren't clean actually clean down the road, right? Like
Mhm.
we're a little short-sighted sometimes where we're like, well, cars run on gas, so we need to get rid of the roads to save the environment. It's like, or we can make the cars cleaner. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
let's reframe like how we're thinking about all of this because I think at the end of the day when you put limits on all of these things legislatively and you like mandate, for example, you can't build new roads or you can't do these things, you actually limit the economic output that your community can have. And I think that's where I'm trying to, because I sit on the transportation committee and and like the jobs committee, and I'm trying to like have these conversations as we debate bills and stuff that like, hey, let's not limit ourselves. Like let's have faith in our ingenuity and the innovation that's coming from all of these really forward thinking companies and let's let the market and technology really solve some of these problems. Because I don't always think that government is necessarily the best solution, right? Like it's like I don't think we are always know what we're talking about. If I'm being honest, like the legislature sometimes isn't always right, and kind of needs to let actual experts in the economy drive that change, and not necessarily a new mandate or something, right? So I think it'll be interesting to see though, like in terms of the conversations I'm having, there are a lot of fears about the kind of the commercial, uh, kind of the commercial space really changing, and I think that that's gonna show in public policy over the next few years in terms of different approaches in public policy. But I think it's still a little too early to tell. I think people are still surprisingly, even though it's 2024, kind of trying to figure out like where things are settling post pandemic, which seems like we should, it's been 2 years, but I think these things take like time to figure out, right? So I don't know. I think it'll be interesting to watch over the next few years, though. And we
Yeah.
also have a lot of new people coming in, by the way, which I'm sure you're getting to know a lot of the new
Yeah.
people. We're having all this turnover in the legislature. Well, honestly, a lot of young people coming in too that
Mhm.
like may have different perspectives. And so I'm actually curious to see over the next like 5 years where the legislature goes with policy. So
Yeah.
I don't know.
It's interesting when I talk to other folks that do what I do or in other sheet metal unions throughout the country. I talk with them about different mandates that the state of California
Yeah.
has, and they're fairly shocked, right? Where
Yeah.
it's not something that yeah, like the EV car situation is one that's very unique. Obviously, you've talked
Sure.
about it
Yeah.
on this
Yeah.
podcast, and we're thinking about too of ways of you know obviously, how do our members feel about particular issues and how does this impact their life? And it's challenging because I think you have so many balances to strike in California,
Yeah.
and obviously so many strong personalities.
Oh yeah.
And I think that, you know, the framing that I like to approach with is thinking about, how does this impact the folks that wake up in the morning early,
Yep.
work hard every day, and just want to spend their Saturdays at, their kid's baseball game or dance
Yeah.
recital,
Yeah.
and live that what is truly the American dream, because the American dream does still exist.
Yeah.
It's just
Yeah. Yeah.
the challenge is oftentimes in California you're commuting for
Sure. Sure.
that American dream, and I think that I would like to see definitely in the legislature when it comes to not just mandates, but thinking about, so many of the folks that where we recruit for sheet metal workers, that they're from the metropolitan inner core, but they're all over the place
Yeah.
ultimately. Our members are very vast in terms of geography, but they oftentimes have to settle,
Yeah.
at distances where some of our members commute two plus hours a day.
That's incredible.
And that's because of their fair desire to be able
Right.
to have a house and,
Yeah.
be able to raise their kids and
Totally.
send them to decent schools and retire with dignity ultimately, right? To not have a jumbo loan on a house,
Yeah.
in one of the closer areas, because so many of these places are unaffordable. And I think that, every cost that we put on the middle class, we're very cognizant of, right? Of thinking
Yeah.
about like, how does this impact our members? And I appreciate folks in the legislature that really take the time. And you're one of these folks, obviously. We've had plenty of conversations about bills, but, to explain, thinking about, how does this impact my area? How does this impact the broader middle class of California? And
Right.
then what are the
Right.
repercussions of it, right?
For sure. Well, yeah, and that affordability piece is huge
Mhm.
because like I feel like some of our policy making we've kind of forgotten about the people that are struggling to afford California. I mean, when you look at it across the country, and you probably have these conversations too, like it's more expensive to live here than pretty much anywhere else, which, it is a bummer, especially because it's such an amazing state. And I think we all want to live here.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, I love this
Like, I
state.
mean, look, you were just talking earlier about all the climbing opportunities,
Yeah.
and we've got the beaches and we've got the weather, and we have so many things that like, make California amazing.
Mhm.
But I think, yeah, one thing that we continue to struggle with is that affordability piece. And yeah, so that's something that should be a major focus for the legislature for sure.
Yeah.
Um, Last question before we'll get into something a little
Mhm.
fun to close it out, but I want to get you out of here and be respectful of your time. It's been a great conversation, but how did you guys do in the legislature this year? If you want to just briefly touch on some of the things you're working on and what you want to see in the future.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate that. This was a fascinating year. So this was the first year that I really dove into looking at statewide policies to be
Yeah.
able to impact working families in California and sheet metal workers. And I worked with a bunch of great folks. The sheet metal workers partnered with the Cal Labor Fed on a bill, SB 1321 Wahab,
Hmm.
and the purpose of the bill was to look at an agency, the Employment Training Panel. It is a great agency we have. It is funded through employer payroll taxes, and it's about an 80 to $100 million a year fund that employers can tap into to be able to train their employees
Hmm.
for high wage, high skill, long term career employment.
Okay.
I mean, talk about the dream in terms of what
Yeah.
we're looking for in employers. The problem we had was we were seeing over time, this agency was created in the 80s, and there were some chips away at some of the standards over time. And to the point where it came to our attention last year that there were some employers that had had civil wage and penalty assessments, meaning that they had cheated workers out of wages,
Okay.
and had been caught by the state of California. Said, yes, this you have cheated workers who were receiving funding for training, and we had talked to workers at these in particular contractors who had mentioned, we didn't receive such training. Obviously they got
Yeah.
the money, but there was no oversight there. And so this was a massive red flag. And so we brought the bill forward, and we had some strong initial opposition. And
Hmm.
through what I learned was a fascinating legislative process, and the art of compromise,
Yeah.
truly, right? Because the agency and others were, asking us to compromise We came out to a bill that I think puts a lot of healthy guardrails
Yeah.
that really promotes high road employers, which I'm really excited about. We were able to neutralize or get support from all of the initial opposition and had a lot of good conversations along the way. So that bill was signed by the governor.
That's awesome.
Thank you. And I think it's a very positive thing for the state of California in that our money will be used in this agency for those high road employers that we all want to give the money to train folks.
Yeah.
And this is something that our apprenticeships apply for and get money for, and so we're excited about that. We are going to continue to promote high road employment through this bill.
That's awesome.
So that was a win. I would say I am a little frustrated at the governor's office in that, we had a bill that was very near and dear to us, SB 984. It was a statewide PLA project, a PLA pilot program on several projects with different agencies that the state building trades worked incredibly hard on. And I think we made it to a point where we had a ton of support moving through to the governor's desk. And then unfortunately, he vetoed it this year. And this is something where I have a frustration because, the governor has set a mandate of he wants to see, or not a mandate. I guess I don't know what you'd call it, an aspiration of 500,000 apprentices.
Okay.
And in the state of California, phenomenal. We want to grow apprenticeship in the state of California. I think project labor agreements are a great way to do that. I think they have great enforcement mechanisms, self-enforcing, that ensure that state agencies that are way too taxed with work, like the Division of Labor Standards Enforcement, they get tons and tons of prevailing wage complaints. I think this was a way to actually save money in the long run. So I think the governor got this one wrong.
Okay.
But moving forward, I think that there's a series of really exciting opportunities in the state of California as I think we continue to pull ourselves out of the COVID era and look forward economically to solving these issues with the legislature around housing and bringing back commercial and ultimately creating more opportunities for good middle-class union construction jobs. What
I love to see as part of that too is increasing our manufacturing in California.
Oh yeah.
I mean, to me, that would be talk about a win-win.
Yeah.
I mean, you would not only create the jobs for building those facilities, but then you also create the manufacturing jobs. I mean, it's a total win-win, and that's one area where you can't do that from home.
No,
right?
for sure. Exactly.
So,
yeah.
And we just do not manufacture things like we used to in California. In fact, in my district this year, we lost some manufacturing, and so we also gained some. But it's one of those things where I would love to see that really, especially with kind of the tensions brewing at the international level. Just really bringing more back home here in the United States, and in particular California, would be awesome. So
totally, and we're excited on that note with the Inflation Reduction Act and the CHIPS Act. We've seen several big manufacturers interested.
That's cool.
And these are manufacturers. Acoma, for example, in the city of Oakland, wants to do a chip plant built under a project labor agreement, and for the workers, did a labor peace agreement. So if they are interested in joining a union, which I certainly think they will be, that they'll have that ability too.
That's really interesting.
So that's exciting. And then we have Applied Materials in Silicon Valley. That's looking like potentially a $4 billion project.
Wow.
So would love to see those happen. I
Absolutely.
agree. Manufacturing.
Let's make it happen.
Whatever we can do to bring in-person jobs back in California and grow that, we are all on board.
I love it. Well, hey, let's get you out of here on something fun.
Yeah.
So I had to expand the category here. So I asked you kind of some things that you enjoy, whatever, and you mentioned historical miniseries.
Yeah.
I think that's awesome. So we're gonna pick our top 3 historical. I had to expand the category because I looked at a list of miniseries and I haven't watched any of them. So I just put historical TV shows. But I'm gonna let you just say your 3, and then I'm gonna embarrass myself with my 3 because I have no exposure to this. So
I love this. Okay, yeah. So I'm a hobby of mine is being into world geopolitics.
Okay, all right.
I'm obsessed with geopolitics, and I think that I have a very, you know, you've obviously gotten to know me. Others that get
Yeah.
to know me, I have a very short attention span. So
So
I
you
think
like the
the
miniseries?
miniseries to me, it's like I know what I'm committing to.
Yeah,
I know it ends.
that's good. I like
So
that.
blending that, and also I think that yeah, we'll go through my list. So top three. So number three, HBO's. Actually, all three of them are HBO. Generation Kill.
Okay.
Have you seen it?
I have not seen it. What I don't even know what it is, if
Yeah.
I'm being honest with you.
So this was a fascinating. I think it's 7 episodes. So
Okay.
worth watching.
Okay.
This is on the Iraq War
Okay.
and showing the perspective from the soldiers and kind of the day to
Interesting.
day.
Yeah.
It is such a great series. I don't know if they like didn't get music rights or something like that, but one of
Okay.
the interesting things about the series is while folks are going through and really, I mean, you see their trials and tribulations, day to
Yeah.
day and the challenges they had. They sing all of the songs. So you don't hear a single bit of music, but all of the soldiers sing every song together.
That's really
Yeah,
interesting.
it's a
Yeah.
unique thing.
Okay.
Well worth watching,
Okay.
well worth
Yeah.
your time.
All right. I might check that one out,
Yeah.
actually.
So number 2, Chernobyl.
Chernobyl. See, this one's been on my list for a long time, and I've just never clicked play.
It is unbelievable. It is 5
Okay.
episodes. I've watched it multiple times.
Okay.
I mean, talk about, I have a lot of pride in the work our government does. And
Yeah.
when it comes
Yeah.
to disasters,
Yeah.
especially, I mean, looking at the recent disasters and
Yep.
how folks are on top of it, right? We
Hurricanes,
address
yeah.
it. Chernobyl is the story of how Chernobyl was attempted to be swept under the rug by the Soviets. And
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
it's
That's
just,
fascinating.
it is, oh my goodness, it is so good.
Yeah, that's fascinating. I'm gonna watch that for sure.
Definitely should. And just like the story of the people, I mean, it's heartbreaking.
Yeah.
The final one is a gem to the world and makes me proud to be an American, truly,
Yeah.
is Band of Brothers.
Yeah. Band of Brothers. Classic.
Classic.
Yeah.
And I think that, I mean, there is not a single flaw in it.
Yeah.
And I mean, what greater story than the United States defeating Nazis?
Yeah,
and
totally.
telling the story of the 101st Airborne.
Amazing story.
That is my top 3, and I
love it.
Yeah,
Have you checked out Masters of the Air yet? It's like I don't know, it's like in the same.
it is. So I'm a little nervous too,
Okay.
mainly because I have such high standards
Yeah.
around, like, and
Yeah.
it's like if you're gonna say like
It's
this
also
is
not HBO, so.
well, but apparently it's from the folks of Band of
Oh,
Brothers.
really? Okay,
So,
that's what I heard. Yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
So I'm gonna
Interesting.
give it a try, but
Yeah.
yeah.
So I'm embarrassed to say I've never seen any of those, and I started Band of Brothers and I didn't finish it. So yeah, I think I'm like I'm not a good American on this podcast because like I feel like these are all really good things to check out. And mine are like I should just wrap the show because mine are so terrible.
I'm
In fact,
excited.
I'm only gonna like. Mine are all fictional. They're not even like real. They're like Queen Charlotte, a Bridgerton.
I love it. Let's hear it.
Pretty
Let's
much
hear it.
stuff that my wife watches, right? The Queen's Gambit, which is like a fictional 1950s.
That was a great show, though.
It's a great show, but
great
it's
show.
not actually in the category of a historical miniseries. And then the one that is legit that I just watched that I would recommend is Manhunt, which is I don't know if you've seen this one.
No,
but
what's
it's
it
on
about?
Apple TV, but it's actually the search for John Wilkes Booth following the assassination of Abraham Lincoln. So that one actually is really, really good and actually does fall into this category.
Wow.
And it's really
Yep.
short. It's like 7 or 8 episodes. And it's obviously there's no sequels because like, spoiler alert. You kind of know the story already. The president gets shot, sadly, if anyone was not aware of that. But no, it's actually it does fall into this category, and
Yeah.
I would put that at the top. But that's mostly because it's the only one I've watched like ever. But it was actually really entertaining and just really good characters, good actors, and like, yeah, I definitely recommend Manhunt. So if anyone's into that,
I'm gonna commit to watching it.
all right.
We all
Well,
should commit
now
to
I gotta
watching
watch
it.
I have to watch all yours now. So.
Band of Brothers above all, though, for sure.
Yeah, no, it was so embarrassing because when you told me this category, I looked up like top 50 historical miniseries, and I've seen like one of them, and it's Manhunt. Like seriously, I'm like, this is so terrible because yeah, I definitely need to broaden my my horizons here. But hey, man, I really appreciate any final thoughts before I let you go.
Yeah, just obviously, I mean, thank you for the work you do.
Yeah,
You know, I guess the one thing I do want to leave is, when it comes to public dollars and the work that we do around distributing that and the construction projects, we can have a vast impact and a very positive value when it comes to the actual workers on
yeah,
the sites. And really appreciate you being thoughtful in
sure,
all the conversations we have around that, and to everyone. And I mean, quick shout outs, just real quick.
yeah,
Assemblymember Joe Patterson,
oh yeah,
Assemblymember Gallagher, and Assemblymember Alanis, they
yeah,
hold it down.
yeah,
So thank
yeah.
them.
No, absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh, and they've all been guests on here. You
Yeah,
probably heard them.
for
So
sure.
no, we appreciate it, man. And honestly, just been a joy having you on, and really, really glad you got a chance to share, some of what you're working on. And yeah, I'm glad to hear you're a listener too. So that's great.
Oh, for sure.
Maybe I'll come rock climbing with you sometime. I don't know. We'll see. I'll think about that one.
Anytime, we'd love to have you.
Hey, if you want to share ideas for future shows, you can email pointoforderpod@gmail.com. Listen on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. You can watch, subscribe, or follow on YouTube, X, Instagram, Threads, and Facebook at Point of Order Pod. And you can follow me on Twitter or X, I should say, at Joshua_Hoover. Did you have an X account, like follow or anything like that? Or
Following your Assemblymember Lowenthal podcast, I do not have any social media.
oh, you know what? Good for you.
Thank you.
Good for
And
you.
it's hard. It's hard
actually
to
applaud
not
you.
have it. Yeah.
I
No.
applaud you.
Thank you, though. I appreciate it. Yeah, you will not find me on social media.
All right, sounds good.
Yeah.
Do not look for Vince on social media. Have a good one, man. Thanks again.
Thank you so much.
See ya.